The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody to today's webinar on Prospero. My name is Derek Krebs. So welcome one and all. We see a nice little large audience that is attending live on this session. Otherwise, we will record it. That way you can share it with your coworkers after the fact. What I'll do is I'll spend the first couple minutes inside PowerPoint introducing the product and topics for today, but the bulk of the time we're going to be looking at the application to provide some nice little tips and tricks for you. So again, welcome one and all. Everybody is currently muted, so if you have any questions, you can take advantage of that question panel there to your right within the GoToWebinar control panel. And also, if that's blocking your view, there's an orange arrow that points to the left or right. That'll allow you to minimize or maximize that control panel. All right, so let's begin. Just the first couple minutes inside PowerPoint. Again, my name is Derek Krebs. I'm a senior consultant with the MSX Group, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Upward to 30 years, I've been a consultant focused 100% on financial reporting and budgeting applications. About half that time, myself and most of our team members and founding members of MSX Group, we started at Microsoft. So about 15 years, we worked at FRX Software and Microsoft, where we delivered to the world those thousands of users of those flagship programs, like on the reporting side, Microsoft FRX, which was later coded and rebranded Manager Porter. And then secondly, on the budgeting side was Microsoft Forecaster, which historically, it used to be two separate programs and processes for budgeting and reporting. But approximately 15 years ago, we got spun off and released Prospero to the market, which is now one cohesive product and process. So again, thank you for joining us today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some experiences working with thousands of customers in all types of industries and different sizes. And with the highlights of the application, again, it does the reporting and budgeting. So that could be a wide variety of reports that you have at month end or year end, like income statements, balance sheets, cash flows, etc. And there's going to be tons of great features to improve your process. That includes interactive charts and graphs, the drill down ability down to the account and transaction level. And one of my favorite features is changing the drill order. That way I can analyze an income statement or any report, maybe drilling by location first or department secondly or vice versa, based on the different segments you have in the general ledger. And that last bullet point, I just want to note because of the audience members, we might have a mixed bag of existing Prospero customers, or secondly, there might be people that we've helped and still support today on those Microsoft products. Or third audience members, we typically have our partners who are looking to sell and deploy the application. And that last bullet point, for those people that are using the Microsoft product still, there's great abilities to migrate your FRX and Manager Porter reports into Prospero, including maybe your forecast or budget template. So that is one of many differentiators that stands Prospero above the rest of the competition out in the market. All right, and last couple of minutes, here's just a slide on the reporting element, including some charts and graphs you see there, the drill down to the account and transaction. And let me emphasize again the last bullet point, where Prospero has its own data warehouse you can leverage to your advantage. That could be including non-general ledger data and statistics. A few examples might be budgets we'll definitely look at today. Or secondly, it could be some nice statistics like units, or rates, etc., headcounts, you name it, that you can include in that data warehouse, including non-general ledger segments. And a couple examples of those non-general ledger segments, maybe on the budgeting side, maybe I want to budget down to the employee or position, or maybe for actuals, I want to store some data for units at the product or customer level. So possibilities are endless again to leverage that data warehouse to your ability. And I'll have some more remarks to that a little bit later. All right, this slide really is the main point, is what we did in all those Microsoft years of FRX and Manager Porter, including Forecaster, is we brought the best things of those applications into Prospero. Primarily, it was our user-friendly and accountant-friendly rows, columns, and trees. And that way you can mix and match those building blocks. Like they're in blue, we have a row definition. I might use that for 10 different reports because one report might have there in red the second component, the column, like month and year to date, but I can use that same blue row in maybe 10 different reports. And third and finally, we also leverage those very flexible and powerful reporting trees, which will look three-dimensionally in the application, maybe by multiple company or location or department. That is very common that even many of you I see in this call today, I've even helped and deploy over the years. All right, and last slide or two is definitely, instead of me doing things offline or manually, like an Excel budgeting most people come from, we call it Excel hell, Prospero has its great budgeting capabilities. So again, one cohesive program and process. It's going to have a familiar spreadsheet style look and feel that's comfortable for our end users. And then there's going to be all the detail screens and bells and whistles to make your budgeting most efficient, including HR detail, my position or employee, or maybe capital detail, where I might want to budget some new computers, equipment, etc., and even revenue details, where I might want to take my budget beyond levels that are in my general ledger, like good old customers, products, etc. You'll see a little bit later here. And it does the instant consolidation, because behind the scenes in that data warehouse, including actuals, it will also, for the budgets, real-time consolidate all that data via our trees. And especially there's an automatic tree called all that you do not even have to create or maintain. The system creates that automatically for you. That all tree you'll see here shortly. All right, and the last couple of slides here, I'll just probably paraphrase with, especially for this recording we'll share after today's phone call. There's obviously some of the challenges of Excel that you're faced today. And then the next slide I'll now transition to is, ta-da, the Prospero solutions and fixes to those challenges you're facing today. All right, I've read off most of those little bullet points, meaning give you better control, automatic consolidations, etc. And last but not least, this is primarily, again, for the recording, and we'll be sending this PowerPoint for those that registered or attended today, is all the differentiators that stand Prospero and MSX Group apart from the rest. So I've quoted almost all of those, except for maybe the last bullet point or two, meaning, hey, we're a fraction of the cost of our competition, not only in software licenses, usually about half the cost, but also in services, meaning what does it take to get me trained and set up? Usually we're about a half to a third of what our competitors are due to its ease of use and the migrations that we have from your Microsoft products. And the last two slides that I'm finishing up with is a column to the left. We reflected on all those 20, 30 years working with customers, their common challenges, and then to the right, the Prospero solutions. So what I'm going to do is probably just discuss these in more conversational tone when I look at the different features of the application. And there's one slide or two of the challenges to the left, or the Prospero solutions to the right. And this is obviously slide number 2 on that. All right. Well, hopefully I didn't bore you too much within that PowerPoint, but I see a few of the people are new users, maybe unfamiliar with the application. So this is a nice general overview of the application. And what I'm now going to do is we're going to look at the product to the eyes of two people in your organization. Maybe one as an end user, like a manager I call it, who has maybe limited access rights, and maybe the second is what we call a power user that's using the finance and accounting area. So whenever I launch Prospero, it does not matter what method I choose, because this product could be installed on your local machine and servers, what we call private hosted on your servers and applications, or it could be hosted and accessed via the internet. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just showing you I'm logging into an internet. This is going to be a hosted version of the application that we'll soon see. And to save a few clicks, I've already logged in, but this again is one option of 2 or 3 that you have is our hosted version. I'd say most of our customers today are doing that for several advantages, but I'll maybe just leave it at that brief little note. And I've already logged in the application, and regardless if it's hosted by MSX Group, the internet or cloud version, or you installed on your servers or a third-party hosting that you have, it has the same look and feel, meaning it's going to be a Microsoft Office look and feel that we then carried across from all those years within working at Microsoft, meaning ease of use and navigation. Now, this end user I'm currently logged into as, they have access to 2 reports, like you see this heading called Reports and Charts. To the left, we'll call that report number 1, my nice actual versus budget income statement for both the month and year to date. And then here to the right, we'll call this report number 2, a nice little trended 12-month this year, last year report. So I can see a nice trends, good or bad. Or secondly, this user has access to update their budget or forecast. And then I'm going to look at this secondly, this input or budgeting area. But let's begin looking at a financial report. And as I open up this report, I want to acquaint you briefly with our demonstration database. We have 3 responsibility segments, including our account, like revenue, expense, and balance sheet. We do not see the account because that's usually supplied in our row or line set. But in our demonstration database, we have multiple company. However, this user has access to only one company. But in just a moment, I'm going to show you the eyes through the CFO who has access to multiple company. Secondly, we have location, and third, department. And similar story on this location, we have about 15 different locations, but this one user only has access to a single Denver location. And last but not least, we have a department as one of our responsibility centers or segments in our general ledger. And here is an instance where I'm looking at department, 2 efficient ways I can see the departments. This is what I call a list view, like you see department 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. But efficiently, I also can click on this button here to see or select my different departments or locations or companies via a tree. Now here's one example of maybe 3 we're going to see on our tree today. The tree currently on department, and again, this tree called all is automatically created and maintained versus the old Microsoft products, you had to always create it manually, and as you add new departments or locations or products, etc., based on your general ledger segments or dimensions, you had to maintain that. So that is a huge win and efficiency for Prospero, that all tree. And what I'm going to do now is my Denver location I'm the manager for. I want to look at all departments first, what I call sort of the high macro level. And then what we're then going to do is drill down to efficiently see maybe some good or bad areas. And then I'm going to look more granularly at a single maybe department within my Denver location. Now the next 5 or 10 minutes I'm going to spend interacting with the report. Then we're going to look behind the scenes as a power user, efficient ways I set up and create that report, and even avoid maintenance as new accounts or departments get added. And then the tail end of today's phone call will be looking at the budgeting capabilities. All right, now with the quote unquote interacting with the report, I'm going to look at about 5 or 6 icons in the toolbar from the left to the right. I'm going to drill in as I'm currently looking at all departments, but I'm going to look at specific data or departments and even change the drill order. And especially this change drill order will be most powerful under my CFO or power user who has access to multiple companies and locations. Secondly, we're going to display this data as a chart. That way I can graphically see, like a picture is 1,000 words, and even drill into that graph. Third, you're going to see me drill first of all into a revenue line, or secondly to expense line. But then this full account detail is where I can see all account detail on one page, which you might prefer, or maybe your auditors might want that information. Next, I'm going to change the prompt. Currently, I'm looking at all departments, then I'm going to drill down, but I'm going to look at maybe a single department, like Department 100 Sales or Department 200 Service. And last but not least, I'll also add annotations. I'll pretend that you're my boss and you want me to explain variances, good or bad, to this actual versus budget report. And finally, we're going to export this report out to Excel. That way I can do some additional ad hoc analysis with that data, or maybe share it with some other people that are non-licensed users. However, we're probably always going to recommend being a licensed user in the application for a few advantages and reasons. One is it's secure data. We don't want to get in the wrong hands. It's real time and live, meaning stagnant, not old. I'm not doing some manual exports and reiterations of the data. And then also you're going to have advantages of the graphing and annotations. However, I'm going to still show you some output to Excel and PDF because maybe I have some non-licensed users. Maybe in phase 1 of your rollout, you want to just send it to them being a non-licensed user. All right, let's now circle back to those 5 or 6 bullet points within the next 5 or so minutes. I'm going to look at my sales. I'm currently looking at all my departments within this one Denver location. Now when I drill into sales, I drill anywhere on that line, and what it did is it opened up another tab here to the right. Like here to the left was my original report, and then to the right is when I drilled into sales, as you see the header, and this is really my two departments that have that data. Now when I drilled in, it's almost expected that I see it across multiple columns, including calculated variances, because a lot of our competition that is much more expensive, costly, and harder to learn and deploy, usually those competition only drills into a single cell at once, but I see it across all these columns, which I love. And this is what I'm going to call the account detail, where I'm seeing the different departments of sales data. And then I'm going to drill into this top line, and it opened up a third tab here to the right, and this is my transaction detail. So for this month, here's maybe transaction 1, 2, and 3 of this maybe revenue, or secondly, we'll look at expenses. And usually I can include some vendor or customer information, but we blank this out since we're using some of our mocked up data that we actually have internally. And then I'm just going to close out of that transaction detail. Here is my original account level detail. And then here's my original report where I'm looking at all departments. Well, let me immediately go, because when I drilled into this sales, I'm even going to look at expenses here. Similar story. Here's my next level down. It's the department, since I'm looking at a single company of the United States, and since I'm looking at a single location of Denver, that's my next level down. And then maybe I want to now turn my attention, where I see some variances, good or bad, to my sales single department. So I'm going to close out of that drill down of my second line for expenses. This button now, I'm going to change the report prompt. Usually it will remember my prompts, but I'm actually logged in as 2 or 3 different people. And then here's my same United States Denver, but I'm now going to look and turn my attention just to a single department for sales, which I just typed it in, or I could choose it either graphically using a tree, or I could turn it off and seeing a list of the departments I have access for. And if time permits, I'll show you very easy security that me as the accountant can define which locations or departments a user can or cannot see, and we call that assignments per the user. And let me conclude. I'm now looking at a single department 200, and I have the same type of drill down to the account and transaction level, which sure, I'll now just drill into office expense. There is now all the different transactions, and maybe this might be Home Depot, Lowe's that I might have bought this expenses or received the revenue from, the transaction level. All right, thank you for allowing me to show that. Maybe repeat a couple of keywords and concepts within. Now, since it's fresh in our mind, what I now want to do is let's talk about changing the drill order. And how I'm going to best demonstrate that is by looking at my CFO or power user that has access to multiple company and multiple locations. It's the same report, but the balances are larger since I'm again looking at higher level. Now the same sales I'm going to drill in, but now this time my first hierarchy from biggest to littlest in my dimensions is by company. So as my CFO, here's my first click or level of analysis by company. I'm now going to drill into my United States company because my second level of 3 is the location from big to small. And then here's the different locations of data within United States company only that I began to drill into. And then here finally, especially my end user only entered the report looking at this lower level, meaning one level back, only United States company, only Denver, but then here is the same type of drill down we saw only as the end user. Now, great, I love my analysis just then because without going to 4 or 5 different reports, or I don't have to scan through 10 or 20 different Excel sheets, I can see easy variances without having to hunt and peck for those. Now, one of my favorite features is this change the drill order. Usually I predefine for a report my normal preferred drill order, and from top down, first of all, I drilled into company, secondly, location, and third, department. But again, I do not have to go to a second, third report. I can then simply drag now department. Instead of being the third layer of my analysis, I put it at the very top. Now when I drill into the sales, great. I can see immediately, maybe this is my department level being first instead of third in my level. And then here, I'm going to come up here and change the drill order. Just to again show you, I can easily on the fly drag and drop it. And this does not affect my normal and preferred settings that we usually predefine the report, but that's one of the most robust drill downs I've seen in the market, because I actually worked with about 5 or 10 different competing products, but hands down, Prospero is one of the most powerful and flexible you'll see within the drill down across multiple columns and changing the drill order. All right, I'm going to conclude with that. Thanks for letting me share that. Let me return back to my end user, and let's look at this data now graphically. This button here on the toolbar, I'm going to display this data as a graph, and this is a 3-dimensional, even drill downable graph, because notice my columns are headings. Here's actual, prior year, and budget. This is really my margin analysis. I budgeted a 15% profit margin, but looking here to the left, my actual is only 6.4. You see the legend here to the right, like revenue in blue or expenses in red. I'm actually going to take this actual part of my graph and I'm going to drill into it. And here's my next level down in my graph, meaning I started looking at all departments for a single Denver location, but now here's my different departments, and even I can go further down. And really what I'm doing is here's the tab to the left, my original graph, but then here's the tab to the right where I drill down and even I can go further. We have about 10 different graphs out of the box, meaning I don't need to be an Excel guru, which I think I'm very good at Excel, but I still do not like graphs and I'm not good at Excel graphing. This is not Excel graphs. These are simple graphs. All you have to do is turn on a check mark within the report saying yes or no to wanting a graph, and then choosing from a list of about 10 different graph types. That's all you have to do, which I'll show you here shortly. Now, what I'm transitioning to, I'm going to now do a side step for about a minute or two. This is what we call an efficient report collection, meaning at month end, it's very common for you to have to produce multiple reports. It might be your CFO, it might be your board of directors or banker. Now, this is one example of 3 of report collections, meaning multiple reports. Well, this report collection actually shows 2 reports there in a tabular or report view, but it also shows 2 reports there to the right in a graphical view. And maybe I'm going to expand and interact with those in just a second. However, back to my end user, one of my promised interacting items I'm now just going to jump right to is the ability easily to export this to Excel and or PDF. And even to allow me to do that is this graph that I drilled into, because here to the left is my original graph, to the right is what I drilled into. Well, what's also very cool is this icon. If I'm now looking at a graph, I can switch back to the report view, because here, as the heading now will state, I drilled into my expenses. Here is it broken out by departments. So again, you can go between your graph and report view at any stage of your report. And now I'm going to come up here and export this out to Excel. Any file name and path, I'm just going to keep the defaults there and maybe overwrite a file I did before. And this is what I'm going to call one report in only one department, or drill down, meaning again, my expenses I was analyzing broken out by my maybe drill order I last chose. The second example I want to provide you of maybe other ways you can share or disseminate data is one report, meaning an income statement, but now notice the different Excel sheets. Here's my different locations and different departments. I can include both financial level and account detail level. And last but not least, how about my banker or board member? They want to see 3 reports every single month. So now what we see here is income statement, meaning report number 1, or here's report number 2, balance sheet, or report number 3, cash flow. Awesome. I probably hear the oohs and ahs. I saw a little comment through the area here that one of our customers said on the call today, yep, we're using those frequently and they love them. So thanks for that feedback, one of the persons. Now, the last example to report collections after the first is we saw here in the electronic viewer or workspace, we call it. The second example of report collections we saw here in Excel, like report 1, 2, and 3. But maybe my last example I want to share with you is in a PDF file. All right, so maybe I want to print or share this electronically to save a tree. but I'm just scrolling down. There's maybe report 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a lot of you probably are manually running reports individually, going to the copier, printing them out, or maybe Excel's doing it manually, but that's how you can automate that process to bring the easy button to your reporting and budgeting. Now, let me briefly show you behind the scenes on that report collection since it's fresh in our memory. So I'm logged in briefly as my power user, and let me do maybe one or two things. One is I want to emphasize again our powerful and user rows, columns, and trees. So now I'm logged in as my power user in finance and accounting. I'm going to come here on the home ribbon to this button, what's called my catalog view. What I do see awesome that I love is here's all the different reports in the system. Here's maybe the line set being used, the column, who last modified it, when did they last modify it, when was it last used, when did I publish it out, making it available to my end users. I can come up here and sort all these reports. Like the line set, I'm going to sort all these reports by the line set being used, and great. Here's a very common design, meaning I have 10 reports that are income statements, but they might vary by the column or tree or structure. Now, a lot of our competition is Excel hell, and what you would see, or not see especially, in our competition, you would not see and have the ability to share the rows, columns, and trees. Usually our competition are Excel add-ins. You only see these Excel files. And I know from running the report so often that these share the same look and feel, but usually what I have to do is, if it were people outside of Prospero, I'd have to open those up individually, maybe change the column structure, individually change the line structure. So that again is an awesome win for, I see several prospective people that are considering the move to Prospero that I definitely favor as a consultant and take my word of 30 years and thousands of customers and products working with. All right, I'll get off of my soapbox there for a moment. And the next thing I want to do, and as I promised, is let's look behind the scenes at that report collection. All right, so here is one of the report collections we saw, meaning report 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can click on the add button or remove because right now I'm going to randomly add a 5th and 6th report that maybe management wants me to share and easily produce. Here to the right, I can run it for a single and consistent report date. So let's role play. I want to run it for period 3, like March for 2024. And then on the output tab, we saw again 3 examples. We saw in the workspace, which I'm sure you didn't forget, but here's the workspace. Secondly, and lastly, I'll take you to, is we saw in Excel, like here's report 1, 2, and 3 in Excel, or finally, we saw in the PDF file, report 1, 2, 3, 4 as I'm scrolling down. And really that's the final punchline as we look at the output tab to the workspace or Excel or PDF, or even we have what's called the publish report area, which is where I save electronic final copy that I'm going to bounce back to as the end user to see that one more time as. And maybe one button here. As I always like to show maybe coaching and training along the way, especially many of our existing customers I see in the call today. When I do output to Excel, here's one little check mark that you can say yes or no to. Do you want to go that to a single file or turn it off to go maybe these 6 reports to 6 different files? Otherwise, it's probably more common to have them go to a single file like we saw. Now, the other thing before I forget is on this one report, here's our good old line or row, here's our column, and we saw it in the catalog view where it's shared, but let me show you the chart tab. Because when I said it's simple as turning yes or no onto the chart to reduce it, that's all you have to do. And then here's a list of the 10 different chart types, meaning this is nothing in Excel, but that allowed me to produce the different graphs we saw maybe 2 or 3 examples for and even drill down into. And that's all you have to do to allow charting. Because most of our competition, their story will be, oh, you have to be an Excel guru, or you have to buy a third-party product like Power BI and have to know all your different database tables and fields. Nope, that's not our story, but there's our ease of use. Last concluding remarks as my end user, then I'll show you a couple of things more on the reporting side as a power user, meaning the lines or column efficiencies. And then we're going to wrap up with the budgeting side. All right, let me just close out a couple of windows. I'm logged in back as my end user. And what you've asked me to do is maybe share this data with my auditor. I drilled in earlier to the sales line only. I drilled in the expenses only. But now this button, to not forget about it, is my full account detail. And basically in just a second, you're going to see every account. So here's my sales line in the detail. Here's my cost of goods sold line in all the detail. Here's my salaries detail, office expense detail that I can see again on one page. Here's the original report. And usually what I like to do for coaching and training, there's the full account detail. I can see all account detail across all columns on one screen, which now here's the tab to the right that I'll close out. And how about the last couple of things as this end user is you've asked me to explain a variance. Well, one visual cue, and I'm hovering on top of it, is this blue dot. That's an account with a memo or note. And over here to the right, I'm not going to hide it, but here is what user. And for demonstration purposes, I'm logged in as a generic manager 1, but here's Derek on this day and time added the memo or note. I might be Derek's boss. I'm going to add a little note. Here's Derek's boss, and this is our game plan. So you can have nice little interaction inside this published report. And then what you're now going to see is maybe multiple people, multiple dates and times, and notes where you can collaborate and interact with the report, meaning I don't have to bounce to separate emails, Excel files, PDFs, or Word documents. That's going to be centralized and available for those people that have this report. We call that report visibility because maybe I don't have access to report. Or secondly, assignments, because maybe this is just the Denver location that I have access to. And I should be able to show you security, which is only about a 2 or 3 minute little overview. All right, and also you saw me navigating between departments. One way is I just came up here and changed my report prompt. Normally, again, we'll remember these selections, but I logged into my CFO who was looking at all companies in all departments. But then here specifically is me looking at the department one more time, or again, what I had access to. Either a graphical view or turning this off via the list view. And then one other thing here too, since I'm lazy sometimes, we have here to the right a little prompt window, which basically is maybe the old FRX and Manager Porter trees. So I might just want to come up here on Department 100, which is my administration, or better yet, sales. I know has data here. I can come up here and click, and basically I just want to open up that unit here. All right, so now I'm just basically opening up a more micro or lower level of support, maybe a single department. Like here, the tab to the right, we're looking at just sales, or here to the left, I'm looking at all departments when I drilled in. All right, cool. Now for some of our ease of report setup and maintenance, let me close out a couple of these windows. I'm now logged in as my power user. And one of the most efficient things, or I even should say painful things in your report writing most people have today is whenever you add a new department or location, we already spoke of solved by that automatic tree called all, or secondly, if I'm adding a new revenue or expense, which means, hey, I have to go back and remember all the different reports and maybe row formats or line definitions and update that. Now we solved that and usually can avoid maintenance altogether by leveraging what we call summary accounts and expanding. And my example is going to be on this expense line. We see above this row all of my different individual expenses, either the individual accounts or it might be one level down based on how you subgroup your expenses within our account tree, which I'm now going to show you and segue to. I, as the power user, I can come up here and open up my line or column definition. In the line definition, and most reports focus on your natural account. And this is the old-fashioned way. In my revenues, I'm showing account 4,000, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. That's the old bad way. The new good way is on this expenses line. I'm expanding above this row or below it. And what 0 means, it means show me every individual account. Or I could type in 1, meaning show me one level down, which might be 10 different subgroups based on the tree and based on your report structure. Like total expenses, One level down might be wages, office expense, utilities as one level down. Now, furthermore, and really the punchline to this is leveraging what we call summary accounts. Notice a few examples like cost of goods sold, profit or expenses, and now you can name these accounts anything you wish. What I did is I chose this little pick list for my account, and I'm just scrolling up because, yep, this is the same thing you saw, meaning here's a numeric list. I can see my different accounts and descriptions, but I'm going to come here to a graphical view. Now, most clients using Prospero, they only need one account tree, but we have a few different ones for maybe cash flow budgeting or maybe different industries. But here is my net income that I like breaking out by cost and profit. And then here's profit, like you see cost of goods sold and profit here in the background, and maybe one or two levels down beneath. Now here's maybe one example of two or three, like revenue. You might have a nice range, or here's cost of goods sold. And speaking of, when I mentioned one level down, here is one level down, which is my overhead, labor, and material. This is one level down. I could have defined in cost of goods sold, but I didn't. I'm just really just showing cost of goods sold as one line, not expanding. But there's maybe an example of cost of goods sold and one level down for material, labor, and overhead. And finally, I'm going to conclude with this expenses. Now, usually I just need one master account tree, which means the setup and maintenance is easy. And then this could be used across 10 different reports. And I'm using a nice little range here for these expenses. Or in other words, if I add a new expense to my general ledger, Prospero will automatically integrate your general ledger. We interface with about 40 different accounting packages and systems. Secondly, I do not have to update this tree. And third, I do not have to update this line set or row definition, which is used not only in a report, but also and commonly in my budget screens, which I'm going to get to in the last maybe 10 minutes of our session today. And what I like to do is I like to show you behind the scenes and looking at that tree. But before I forget, here in my row or line definition, primarily we only use the account segment. But looking here to the right for the property, which I'm not going to auto hide, is maybe I also want to filter on location. And what it did here is it added a new location column for more granularity. Maybe I want to break my rows down by, but usually I instead do not have the location broken out into lines. That's usually the prompt in my report, like we saw Bob only seeing Denver, or Sally only seeing location 2. And I'm just going to turn on additional segments, like department I just additionally turned on if I need to have more lower level filters, but usually we turn that off and use that as our report filter. One quick thought is, well, here in this one report that my CFO and I like to see is I'm showing my locations or departments side by side in the column. Or also I could filter this because maybe my expenses, maybe down here, this might be expenses for department A, expenses for department B. So we have a lot of slicing we can do, either by my tree, meaning report prompt, or the second way, using column filters, or maybe a third way is using line filters for maybe different location or department data. So really, the possibilities are endless. I challenge you to challenge me to, hey, we have a free trial version of Prospero. Give me any report or budget you have, and I can definitely produce it inside Prospero within our free trial version, which is going to be a concluding little invite for those people that do not have Prospero. All right, let me return back because one final thing I wanted to show you, logged in as this power user, was behind the scenes looking at our trees. So within trees, this will be maybe my second example. We earlier saw the departmental tree, which why not? This tree called all, automatically created and maintained. Secondly, let's look at our natural account. Most people only have one tree, but you can have multiple. And then here is, I'm just going to come up here and expand the entire tree, and you see some icons to the left and also cut, copy, paste type stuff here. And then here's my same expenses. And what's great is here's that range. I can see the different accounts in the range. I can come up here and exclude accounts, maybe if they're an oddball that's in a different area. And the system always prevents me some checks and balances in these trees because, as a quick little example, I'm going to add a second range that I'm just going to call demo. And I could do it in one of two ways, like account 6,000 through 6,999. And if I clicked OK, well, here we have great checks and balances built inside our product, meaning it will prevent me from adding duplicates. I can also see any missing or orphan accounts. And then lastly, in this tree, this expenses summary, I'm going to right click and I want to see where I'm referencing or using this summary account within the product. And then what you're going to see is a nice little long list. Commonly, you have your accounts in the lines, but I showed you a couple of reports you can filter and rotate it in your report filters or columns, but awesome. If I change my mind, meaning maybe I add a new revenue expense that's outside the range, I just do so in one spot. I do not have to update and forget and have human error in all the reports downstream. So there's another huge win and differentiator of Prospero, leveraging these trees on the account segment. And I should be able to show you a third example on location. All right, let me close out a couple of windows. I'm going to turn now my attention to the budgeting side. I'm also looking in case any questions came through the queue here, so I'm just skimming up and down. I think I've addressed, maybe I saw 2 questions that came in. I see about 6 questions that came in. If any I do not get to, I'll definitely follow up individually, which I see 1 or 2 I'll probably have to ask more information or follow up on that. So thank you for submitting those questions. And then 2 or 3 I'm about ready to answer here with the remaining 15 minutes we have. I am now going to log back in as my end user. I'm going to close out a couple reports, like here is a single department, or here is where I was looking at all departments for a single location, Denver. And even one step back is I had a shortcut to one of my published reports. And then here in the lower left, ease of navigation like Microsoft Office Outlook type. I'm looking at the published reports, or otherwise here's my input, but now I'm going to turn my attention to the budget or forecast input ability. But before I do so, I again want to emphasize this budget data, it's read and entered or edited inside Prospero, meaning not Excel hell. It does the automatic consolidations of the one cohesive product via the trees in the one SQL database or warehouse behind the scenes. And now let's come up here on my budget input. I'm going to open up 3 departments briefly for my single Denver location I'm in charge of. First of all, the first 2 departments are expenses only. And long story short, I can open up 100 of these departments. And really, it's using the same single line set and template. Is really the punchline I just gave away. But here's Department 100, expenses only. I'll demonstrate this further in just a moment. On the toolbar, reopen input, I'm going to go to my second department, also expenses only. And third and finally, I'm going to open up a different department that has a different look and feel, meaning a different line set or row definition. So this is a second of 3, an expense only department, but now third and finally, let's open up one of my revenue cost of goods sold departments that using a slightly different template here. We call that an override. So I might have 2 or 3 or 4 templates that may be used by 50 different location departments, but this one now that's rendering is tailored just for revenue cost of goods sold. And also I'm going to show you 3 examples of data that's not in our general ledger that we can record actuals and enter budgets to that's not in my general ledger. One example is the product segment or dimension is not my general ledger. So here's product 10 motors, product 20 compressors, spare parts, not my general ledger. Second example of 3 that I can record actuals and budgets to. These units and sales price or cost price are not in a general ledger, but you can see easy accommodations for such. And third and finally, we're going to look at down to the employee level. All right, now to enter data, I like to use rows in white when I'm budgeting and forecasting that are editable. And really all I need is about 5 minutes of end users time when we deploy Prospero to people. And now I just changed that from $2,000 to $3,000. I'm now saving it because the lines in gray, they're locked from input because I'm just calculating sales dollar based on maybe you, the manager, inserting maybe a units or price, but you can again control that. And even I'm showing you a bottoms up budget, meaning by individual location departments, or sometimes I could do a top down budget based on your need. So again, test me on that free proof of concept on such. We have awesome audit trailability because looking at the history, I just changed that from $2,000 to $3,000. And lo and behold, you're going to see here Derek logged in as manager 1 on this day and time, changed from 2,000 to 3,000. I'm looking at a single account like unit sold. That's not my general ledger, but I also can see history across the entire department. Also, I can see budget or forecast history across the entire organization, but time permits, I will not show you those two other ways, but I can definitely see history beyond the single department or account that I illustrated. Let me return back to my go-to department, expenses only, same story. Gray is what I like used from lock from data entry because all these salaries and wages, including headcounts, budget, and even to the right, I have some actuals. Now these actuals, real-time read from the last time the integration was ran. Even I can run this integration on demand, meaning let me set it up every hour, run it every 5 minutes. Let's say I run it every hour, but I'm at month end. I, as the power user, can refresh the integration of the data warehouse at any interval that I want. And I saw that one question that just came in regarding our data warehouse and integration and interval at any speed and even running it on demand, like at month end if you need to go faster beyond what you, the customer, will tell us how often you want the data refreshed. Continuing, we looked at salary dollar, head count, and even including benefits like health insurance and payroll tax. On the human resources tab, I see it as this manager, but maybe I don't. If I see the tab, it could also be read only because maybe any HR changes like new hires or fires has to go through you, the power user, or maybe your HR person. And even we just came off a user forum, meaning twice a year, we have 2 full days of free product training where we walk you through all the odds and ends of this screen. But at a high level, we have people that could be hourly based or salary based. And you see these 2 columns, that high numbers are that salary people, including the allocation, the high numbers are hourly people. And then what we're seeing people in this allocation column, I'm showing people mixed, but I can see everybody hourly based, every full-time equivalency based. And even if I take a step back, here's those same statistics at a single department level, but I could then bounce to the entire CFO user looking at all departments and drill in to see some of these statistics. Hint, hint, leverage the statistics in data warehouse to your advantage. And then back on the HR tab, extra nice to haves, which are optional, but the product allows you is different pay raises, bonuses, overtime, and different benefit designations. Maybe 2 or 3 of those I'll show you. Like here, this person starts making $25,000, but I'm going to give them 10% raise in period 3. And usually I just import that ahead of time for everybody because maybe everybody gets a 3% raise in period 3. I'm just changing this right now, but usually I just import that in ahead of time. Looking further to the right, we also have bonus by either $% And if you don't have a specific bonus period, like this bottom line, I could even accrue it. Meaning 10% bonus, the person to the left on that second highlighted line at the bottom, they work from period 6 through 12, meaning a different start and end period. I even can blow these 2 columns out, meaning start and end period, by individual month, because maybe January, February, March, I might want higher or lower hours, so we can even break that out by month. There's some granularity that I'm not showing you, but we could. And then further to the right, just by name, overtime, yes or no, you don't have to use it. You can hide some of these columns. Commissions, yay or nay, if you have any salespeople needing that type of methodology. And finally, here's oftentimes where I'll use myself or MSX Group as an example. We have employees in about 10 different states. I live here in Colorado, so whenever Derek gets loaded, he might be loaded to the San Diego location, maybe to the California next to his tag, and maybe have health for family for him. Now these headings, you define those as a company or customer of ours and as a power user. You define what these choices are. And behind the scenes, there's just one simple table that says the different rates and or limits. Because California might be for state unemployments, we'll call it $6,000 a person's salary at a 6% rate. Or New York, let's call it something different. Maybe it's a 7% rate at a $7,000 limit. So you define a simple table where you define these rates and limits. And for Prospero to set up that rate and limit, it might only take me about 15 minutes. But in our competition, they'll never demonstrate and show that because that's probably going to take you hours and hours, and I have to probably do 4 or 5 different steps that they won't show you. But we definitely will on maybe a demonstration call. All right, I'll probably wrap up here. I probably want to wrap it up with a little question and answer at the very tail end. I want to show you a couple other things security related that I saw a question or two come in. All right, so looking here to the left, I'm going to now return back. Here's where I have all the details by person or position for all my budgeted or forecasted wages, statistics like headcount hours, including some of our benefit tax. And notice when it starts to taper down automatically, there's no formulas in the system. There's only one table where you define these rates and limits, like I quoted a couple for our state unemployment. Additionally, some nice to haves. Notice these little blue dots. Those are notes on my budget. And on the toolbar, I'm going to click on this button called Show the Annotations column. Because how about you just submitted your budget to me? I can see who, like Bob or Sally, when, on what date and time, and then here's maybe their notes of why they're budgeting these amounts. Other nice bells and whistles is on the toolbar, we have what are called line items. And these guys here with the plus icon to the left, I'm going to expand it because maybe I'm in the marketing department. I'm going to collapse. I might be in the marketing department. Here's this one general ledger account, $73.50, which is my advertising expense. And Derek budgeted $200,000. Well, why the heck did he do that? Well, if I expand it, oh, here is Derek going to do a little print publication. Or here's a television ad, or maybe a magazine ad he's going to do on this date and time. And I can come up here and simply right-click and insert another line item to break out my budget on the fly. Keyword there again, manually on the fly breaking that out for detail, meaning I don't have to ask you, the power user, to define a certain structure. But let's not forget, on this my revenue cost of goods sold screen, maybe I want you to enter data in a fixed structure, like number of units and price, that I want you to use these driver-based modeling for, so you can sort of have the best of both worlds based on your area of the organization and your preference. And last few things on the budget side, then I'll wrap up for some last concluding little remarks, are we have the capital detail. Let me collapse the line items here. I might be in IT. I need some computers, hardware, or I might be needing some new automobiles, new equipment for manufacturing, you name it. This is what I'm going to call my additional or budgeted new capital. And on the capital tab, I can come up here and insert a new line item, which I'll just use this as an example. And then we have a couple of, why not, it only just takes me seconds here. I'll just call this demo. This will be a demo test here. Now this capital type, you as the power user, based on your general ledger, you define this short little list. And behind the scenes, it's really 3 main things. One is it's which balance sheet account we're hitting for, let's say, a automobile versus a computer versus some other equipment. Secondly, it's my depreciation expense account. And third, this list that you define, these IDs and descriptions, defines the life and months that this depreciation is handled by. And then I'm just going to use one example to quote, like here, I might need to buy some new laptops. In April, I'm needing 3 of these computers at $2,000 each. So in April, I'm budgeting $6,000, and even Derek came up here and added an annotation or note to the budget. And then what I just did is I added and turned on the annotation column on the toolbar to see quickly across all these assets who added the memo or note and when, that I can quickly review, because most of our competition, you have to go into a single cell and a single item, but I can see all that, review, all on this one screen. And let's go full circle back to my main tab. Primarily, we're looking and focusing on our revenue expense budget rolled up, but there's my capital. We have separate little sessions and training on balance sheet and cash flow budgeting, but we'll save that for a future day and webinar. And as I wrap up, let's look briefly at security, since it's really only a 1 minute or 2 minute conversation. Now, a visual for that is when I came up here and opened up the report, they only saw 2 reports. Now, in our demonstration database, we have multiple companies. However, this user had access to only United States. For the location, they had access only to Denver. And again, we call that assignments. And let's now look at our power user. We don't need IT, we love them, but all we need is about 30 minutes of IT's time to install the product, or maybe 0 of IT time if we have us install it and host it on our side. But I'm going to show you under security, by accounts, for accounts, we always say in these products. Now, these are the different roles or groups here. I'm just going to expand one role or group that has my manager 1 I'm using, and 2 key things on security is, first of all, their assignments, and especially what role, maybe 3 things, what role or group or what they can or cannot do. Secondly, their assignments, which I'm now going to show you. This button right here, assignments, here's where they have access to only company 1, but I'm going to add another line or 2 because this asterisk, that means a wildcard, but otherwise here's that tree called all, maybe a 3rd example in our trees. Going to the right, this is a single location, 4100 for Denver, but here is maybe additional trees because I have a regional tree. Maybe Derek's in charge of the Midwest locations, which all those that begin with a 4 series, which means this tree, I do not have to update and maintain as new locations with a 4 prefix get added, and I'll just use that as an example in the 2nd line that they're in charge of all the Midwest locations. And then I can get further granular based on different segments or dimensions that you have in the general ledger, or we also can record actuals and budgets to segments or dimensions beyond the general ledger to, again, repeat that key concept. And last but not least, we have what's called report visibility. Here is the power user. I'm on report number 1. You see here to the left, we have maybe 50 different reports, but this button here for visibility, I want my users to see it. Maybe I simply say, yep, all the users can view the report. There might be some people I want to run it at any day or hour during the month, but a lot of times not. I'm a control freak. I only want to allow them to see the report after I've done with my month-end close and I publish the report. But if all users don't see it or run the report, I can turn it off and I can get more granular by either the role, meaning group of people, which is more efficient, or I can even get down to the individual user level. And even I could add a couple more lines here, meaning there's me inserting more granularity, but probably all is probably a more common option up above. And there's my 2-minute tutorial on how easy security is by the security of what role or group they're in. Secondly, their assignments, like what company or location departments they have. And third, which reports or budgets they have visibility to. And then I'll go full circle back. There is again the assignments like Denver, only the 2 reports for this user. And this allows me also, I'm looking at my other screen for questions that came in. So there again, maybe 1 or 2 questions that I see I did not get a chance to. So I'll probably follow up with you individually for one of those that I'm familiar with their name and companies. And my concluding remarks would be a big thank you for joining us today, either live or via the recording, which, yep, I'll be sharing a little email to everybody that registered and or attended this session. I'll say a nice little recording link, including this PowerPoint, and then this invite one more time for those people that are not yet an existing Prospero customer. I'd be more than glad to do a one-on-one product demonstration. Since everybody is on mute, we're looking generically at our demonstration database, but even you can sign up for a trial version of Prospero. So thank you one and all. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Goodbye.